Generally speaking, I don't think I have a favorite superhero movie in my life. I do think there is one greatest superhero movie made, that is the Superman from 1978, directed by Richard Donner. That being said, I was watching Zack Snyder's Justice League these days, and I was in a very sad and depressed mood in this day. I had a lot of issues in my life and stressful things, but once the movie got to that scene where Wonder Woman beat the out of those terrorists in the bank, that scene is so badass and so adrenaline filled that I felt a great energy that all of a sudden took me out of that mood and made me realize, you know what? This is possibly my favorite superhero movie. My name is Gus, but you can call me BATGUS, and just to be clear, this video that you are watching now was originally made for another channel of mine called Trashing with Gus that talks about horror movies, action movies, and stuff. If you are a fan of this content, please go there and subscribe to that channel as well. I will leave the link right down here in the description. So just to explain, during this video, you're gonna see the background of that channel, but don't worry, because this is a perfect video for this Bat channel. If there's a movie that excites me, makes me feel good, and makes me emotional, it's this one. And every time I watch it in Blu-ray here in my house, I feel very sad for not having the opportunity of watch this movie in a big IMAX screen, because it was only released on streaming. A brief story on the production, because many people do know this information but others don't. This movie had a troubled production, especially because of the tragedy that happens in the family of the director Zack Snyder, because one of his daughters unfortunately took her own life. That caused him to step away from the production before finishing the movie. And the studio Warner Brothers, in one of the most disrespectful moves I ever seen in the history of cinema, decided to hire the director Joss Whedon to come into the production and do some final touches in the final film, in order to make it more family friendly, because the studio wasn't happy with the dark tone that the series had taken with the previous movie Batman vs Superman. But the director rewrote many scenes of the original film, adding some stupid and complete distasteful jokes to the script. Then he reshot a big amount of the movie and created a Frankenstein with very different conflicting tones. And that's the movie that most people saw in 2017 during the world release. But because of the strong fan base of the director Zack Snyder and the necessity of HBO Max by creating new content to its new streaming, the studio gave him some extra budget so he could finish his own original vision for the movie. And that's the wonderful film that we got in 2021. So every time you go to the streaming of HBO Max and search for Justice League, don't play the movie with this cover. Play the movie with this cover here, okay? The difference between the two versions is that the first one has less than 2 hours of duration, and our director's version has 4 hours with a much more solid story, very well told. And believe me, even with the long length, the watch isn't exhausting. And the movie is divided by chapters by the director Zack Snyder. Very well divided, by the way. So you can watch the whole thing in one day or watch by chapters, like a series for example. To make this analysis more dynamic, let's talk about the elements in increasing order, from the good to the great. Aquaman is a great character, especially because of the screen presence of the actor Jason Momoa. His aquatic scenes in the movie are beautiful, and even more beautiful than the aquatic scenes of his own movie, Aquaman, but that's my opinion. But his story is the most throwaway one in the context of this movie. Even that he has a stake in this battle because of the mother box that was stolen from Atlantis, he feels a little like a fish out of water by the end of the movie, no pun intended. Being more an element of pure strength in the group than having a real utility in the final mission. Wonder Woman. I actually love her first solo movie, and turned Gal Gadot the official actress of this character for me. So much so that I wish she could continue in the new universe being created by James Gunn. And this movie is a great sequel to her own solo first movie, showing a much more mature heroine that is the solid base for this group, emotionally and physically. Batman. I love the arc of the big black bat in this movie, which is kind of a mirror of his own arc in the previous movie, Batman vs Superman, where he was fixed in the idea of destroying Superman, and here he has the same fixation but operating strictly on the base of faith, like himself says during the movie. Faith that he can put this group of superheroes together instead of separating them. So much so that he doesn't care about his own life, just about the group's success in the great mission. Superman. Even with his little screen time, here we have his story arc being closed, taking into consideration all the things that were developed since Man of Steel, showing probably one of the mightiest and strongest beings in the universe that has gone through many different human dilemmas and experiences, including his own mortality. This is the aspect that I most love about the character Superman in general, when we can see him in a human level, even though he's practically a god. And the scene that he fights with the whole League is fantastic, especially when the Flash runs behind him during the fight and you can see Superman's eye following Barry even though he is in the Speed Force. And Barry's face of shock makes me laugh very hard every single time. It's one of the best scenes in superhero movies in my opinion. And another thing that I love about this Superman is the black suit. It's awesome. Even this, the 2017 stupid version couldn't give to us. Flash. Talking about him, and let's not talk about the polemics involving the actor for Christ's sake, but he is one of the best elements of this version. Not being a bumbling idiot that do jokes all the time like in the 2017 version, but just being a young superhero that is amazed with the group and everything that is happening around him. His introduction scene saving Iris West is one of my favorites in the movie, and also that scene in the end when he runs back in time using the Speed Force to save the group from a failed first attempt to finish the mission, showing how much this character is powerful and important to the group. And finally, Cyborg. Probably the heart of the movie and surprisingly the most important element of the group to the mission, since he has a connection with the mother boxes. And his story arc in the movie is the best developed and heroic of them all. From losing his mother to becoming a cyborg, living in anger and depression, till the end when he accepts his own nature upon facing the mother boxes. In a great scene that has some tones of horror movie, when the mother boxes try to break him from inside, and he says probably the most beautiful line in the movie, "I'm not broken and I'm not alone," which symbolically has a great meaning for the character, but also a great meaning for the movie itself in real life, because of the connection with the tragedy in the family of Zack Snyder. Until this day, the movie is used to gather many donations for the suicide prevention organization that Zack Snyder supports, which itself makes the reason for this movie existing even more special and important. Well, at the end of the day, is it a perfect movie? Obviously not. There's no such thing as a perfect movie, and this one definitely has some flaws. For example, the inclusion of the character Martian Manhunter makes no sense to the context of the movie, and it doesn't influence anything in its plot. In fact, it even diminishes the impact of a great scene of dialogue between Lois Lane and Martha Kent talking about the grief upon the death of Clark. And at the end of the movie with the extra scene of him showing up for Bruce Wayne and telling him that he will join the Justice League in the future, it's very stupid. He has been a character in the last 3 movies, he saw all the alien invasions that happened and didn't do anything to help, just stayed disguised as a general. And now he wants to help after everything being solved? No way, just stupid and forced. And the last 2 extra scenes in the movie, the Deathstroke one of him meeting Lex Luthor and the apocalyptic nightmare of Batman after the invasion of Darkseid, are just useless. Besides being anticlimactic and confusing, they even diminish the impact of the last real scene of the movie where we hear the recording of Dr. Silas Stone making his speech to Cyborg when he listens to a recorded tape. I know these extra scenes were supposed to establish what we were going to see in the future with the sequels. But even if the sequels were going to be made before James Gunn arriving as the CEO of DC and rebooting everything, they didn't have to be in this movie. They could be left for the sequels. They still diminish the real ending for me, that is Superman opening his jacket and showing the silver S symbol of hope. To finish, the villain Steppenwolf is okay, way more menacing in this version and with a very clear objective this time, but still, he's not a memorable or ideal villain for the League. which is forgivable since this is the first movie of the series. And by the way, all the preparation and build-up towards the threat of this movie is so well done in a mysterious way, because Zack Snyder has a long time of movie to place all the right pieces in the correct places carefully. Because every time the heroes take a step to discover the history behind the threat of the great villain Darkseid, it's quite fascinating to watch, and it has some epic and mythological tones, just like The Lord of the Rings, for example. Anyway, besides the little problems that I mentioned, Zack Snyder's Justice League is a concise, solid, powerful movie that has a very well told story with the threat, the mission of the heroes, the union of these characters. It's epic, emotional, and has a lot of heart. One of the best and most beautiful composed shots I've ever seen in a superhero movie is the last shot of the heroes together, lined up on the top of the nuclear reactor, when they're going to embark on Batman's ship. A so well composed shot, with the soundtrack from Junkie XL, the beautiful lighting, and the camera movement, it looks like a live-action version of a frame in a comic book. Most specifically, a frame in a comic book from Alex Ross, that has his art looking like a painting. I also love that scene where the League sees Darkseid through the boom tube that connects our world with Apocalypse. It's a badass scene in so many levels. With all this package, I can only say to Zack Snyder, thank you, my friend. So what do you think about my opinions regarding Zack Snyder's Justice League? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment below, and please, I beg you to do it respectfully. After all, we fans of DC and superheroes, we can have our different opinions of what we think about these versions of these characters, but we don't have to be mean to each other, alright? It's always better to discuss our agreements and disagreements with respect. And since this channel is growing every day, I decided to also talk about my own creations. And I have my first novel in Amazon right now called Angel of Fire and Steel, a great, epic, dark fantasy adventure that takes place in a world with angels and demons. So if you like this kind of stories, I'll leave the link right down here so you can access the site of Amazon. It is in ebook form, so you can read in your Kindle or any other device that can read an ebook. Please read the synopsis, and if you like these dark fantasies mixed with action and sci-fi, including cyberpunk, I know you're gonna love this book. And this is it for now. If you are liking this content of Batman and DC here in the channel, please leave your like in this video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next Bat video, and bye bye.